Why did the Jedi Council refuse to take Ventress on as a Jedi? And why is it that all of the Jedi during the Clone Wars seemingly had no idea who Ventress was before she became a Dark Jedi? One of the most important characters in all of the Clone Wars was Dooku's apprentice, Asajj Ventress. First appearing shortly after the Battle of Christophsis, Ventress became one of the primary hindrances of the Jedi, specifically Kenobi and Skywalker, both of them who always seemed to have the displeasure of running into her at every single turn. We watched her journey as she started off as something more akin to an extension of Dooku's will, using her skills in assassination and espionage to pull off important missions for the Separatist war effort. Soon though, Ventress would begin to prove herself as a truly exceptional warrior, so much so that Darth Sidious even deemed her a threat towards the end of the war. Sidious, who was impressed with her ability to fight both Skywalker and Obi-Wan at the same time and hold her own. In the end though, she would be cast out by Dooku and spend the majority of the remainder of the war trying to get revenge. But Ventress was not always like this and such rage-filled. Her path was not always one wrought with suffering and darkness. In a flashback in the Clone Wars, we once learned that Ventress was actually an aspiring young Jedi. But oddly enough, prior to her appearance as Dooku's assassin, none of the Jedi seemed to know who she was and had no record of her existence, not even in the Jedi database. So why was this? Why was there no record of Ventress, implying that she was actually never a part of the Jedi Order despite having been trained by a Jedi? So, who was the Jedi Master of Ventress, and why was Ventress not allowed to become a Jedi? Well, my friends, this and more will be explored in today's holocron, as we see just how similar the paths of Anakin and Ventress truly are. The origins of Ventress are incredibly sad, a trend that seems to permeate among Sith assassins. Both Maul and Ventress were taken from Mother Talzin and used by the Sith before ultimately being cast out and left with nothing. Though while Maul's life of pain began the moment he was taken from Talzin, Ventress's story would go a bit differently. Ventress was barely more than a toddler when a group of criminals led by a man named Halstead made their way to the world of Dathomir, threatening to destroy the Night Sister Coven if they did not deliver what they wanted: a young, powerful slave. Wanting to protect her people, Mother Talzin arranged to meet their demands and ended up giving a slave to them. The slave was named Ventress. The criminals had heard of the great power wielded by the Night Sisters and believed if they could control one of the Night Sisters themselves, it would grant them extreme power. Ventress was that weapon and was that prize. To her surprise though, she was treated with kindness by the leader in Halstead, and Ventress was taken to live with them on the war-torn world of Ratatak. Ratatak was split into several feuding factions ruled by various warlords. While Ventress appreciated the kindness of Halstead, it was unbeknownst to her that he was actually training her to be a living weapon, one that he could use to get a leg up in the war and gain more power over the world. The next tragedy of her life though struck when she was only 6 years old, and Halstead's band of criminals would come under attack by the Weequay pirates. Halstead himself would be murdered, leaving Ventress an orphan yet again. One of the pirates was about to capture Ventress, but in her fear and distress, she let out a burst of force energy, hurling the warrior through several buildings, killing him instantly. This single event was witnessed by a nearby Jedi Knight by the name of Kai Narek. Kai Narek, who had been trying his best to help out these war-torn factions and protect the world from pirate raids. The young Jedi Kai Narek would then decide to take the young Ventress in, sensing a great potential in the Force. Eventually, Kai Narek would formally make Ventress his Jedi Padawan, and yet again, Ventress had a family and a home. With this though, is where all the questions arise. How did Kai Narek take her as an apprentice without the permission of the Council? The answer to that, and to why the Jedi Order didn't even know Ventress existed, was because Kai Narek was stranded on the world of Ratatak, and had been for some time. The Jedi had crash-landed on the system after responding to an emergency stress signal, but rather than find a way to return to the temple, he had compassion on the system and decided to permanently set his home up here. Much like Qui-Gon Jinn, Kai Narek believed in the will of the Force rather than the will of the Council, and this is yet another reason why he showed such interest in a young Ventress. He knew that the Jedi Council would never allow for her training, especially after she had murdered a pirate. Ventress was too old, she remembered too much, and she had gone through too much, making her a perfect candidate for dark side allure. Narek knew this, and yet he too held compassion for the young Ventress. For the next 21 years, the two Jedi would train, as Ventress would learn the ways of the Force and construct a lightsaber of her own. Both Ventress and her master became known as local heroes to the citizens of the planet, and they saved countless lives from countless pirate raids. Ventress and her master harkened back to the Jedi of the Old Republic, wandering warriors for the force of good. But on one fateful day, her master was not quick enough and would be shot in the back during one of the raids. Narek would die in Ventress's arms, leaving her orphaned yet again. Unable to contain her raw emotion and properly handle her pain, just as the Council said, Ventress gave into rage and murdered the entire Weequay raiding party personally. Not a single survivor was left. Ventress had fallen to the dark side. Ventress embraced the path of hatred. With her vision now warped, she set out on a warpath of her own. The endless wars of the world would cease at her single command. Ventress would then murder each and every warlord that stood in her way. The entire planet was subjugated by her rule, except for one other, the man that had ordered the death of Narek. This man's name was Osaka. Osaka had great plans for Ventress and wanted the Force-sensitive to fight in his gladiatory arena. Ventress would go after him with a fury and a rage that blinded her, as she was ultimately outsmarted and eventually captured, giving Osaka exactly what he desired. Now fitted with a shock collar, Ventress was forced to fight for entertainment in the arena, until the fateful day when a certain Count from Sereno would visit while looking for a suitable assassin. Dooku witnessed the strength and potential of Ventress firsthand, and devised a plan, manipulating her by lulling her in with promises of power. Dooku eventually helped Ventress escape and gave her her wish, as she was able to personally assassinate and murder Osaka, the last warlord. Ventress then explained to Dooku why she hated the Jedi with all of her soul. She said that the Jedi had abandoned her master on the world, and this anger drove her to join Dooku to kill Jedi and embrace the power offered by the Sith. Ventress knew that the Council would have rejected her, that they even outright hated her existence. She went against their very code. It wasn't long after this that Dooku gifted Ventress a pair of curved lightsabers. These lightsabers had once belonged to Dooku's other apprentice, who had also fallen to the dark side. But now, the lightsabers met another worthy successor in Ventress. And then, the story goes as we know. Ventress was orphaned an incredible 5 times in her life, the last 2 when she was again abandoned by Dooku, and then the Night Sister Coven was destroyed by Grievous. Ventress would grow to be extremely powerful in the Force, once even breaking the Force shields of both Skywalker and Kenobi at the same time. Her abandonment gave her powers in the dark side, and we at the Archives believe that the fate of Ventress could very well have happened if the Jedi had rejected Skywalker. In the end though, Ventress would eventually pull herself back from the clutches of the dark, not all the way to the light, but somewhere in between. In the end, she threw away her path to the dark side and refused to serve the Sith any longer. Although Ventress would ultimately die at the hand of Dooku, she would not die his slave. In the end, Ventress was free. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the tragic origins of Asajj Ventress? And did you know about this before our holocron? As always, my friends, thank you for stopping by the Archives, and may the Force be with you.